My Squidwards, what it do? Please forgive me for being gone for so long. I think you'll understand the circumstances. This is what I'm talking about in this first half of this podcast. We talk about the pandemic. We talk about racial injustice. We talk about why I'm passionate about this topic. And then from there, I dive into returning from quarantine because I know it's relevant for a lot of you guys who have been sitting at home or training inside your house. Now we got to get you into playing sports again. And so I give you some simple progressions, some simple ideas, and the specific things that you should be focusing on right now so that we can return to sports, stay healthy, and perform at the highest level. From there, I started taking questions from Instagram. We talked about ice baths for recovery. We talked about, do we actually need to train to failure for explosiveness improvements? We talked about the best basketball state, who produces the most talent, and we talked about some more topics, so be sure to stay tuned for the entire episode. Let's get this work.
You're listening to the PJF Podcast, a show dedicated to decoding elite sports performance and fitness. I'm Paul Fabritz, and I'm an MBA strength and conditioning and performance trainer. If you want to become superhuman, take your fitness, and take your sports performance to the next level, this is the podcast for you. Let's do it.
What's up, my squids? I hope you guys are doing okay. It's been a long time. A long time. The last time I talked to you guys, I think the world was a normal place. And now the world is not a normal place. Last time I talked to you guys, we were just towards the beginning of the coronavirus. Now we've been locked in for months. Economy is no longer a thing. Jobs are no longer a thing. Last time I talked to you guys, racial injustice was not at an all-time high. Obviously, it's been around my entire life. I've been very aware of that. But the George Floyd video is probably the most sickening thing I've ever seen. But the protests and the support of Black Lives Matters and pushing forward that movement has been really impressive to see. Obviously, some of you guys know my wife is Black. I have two children that I adopted who are Black, who I'm currently raising. And so it kind of hits a little bit different for me because I'm having to have these conversations with a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old and trying to explain to them racism and about how there are a lot of very great people of all colors, but there are still some racist people who are just not going to see them for who they are. Very difficult conversations to have, but these are the conversations that we all have to have with our children. Everything that we say has a trickle-down effect. You slip up and you say the wrong thing, and kids hold on to that, and that becomes part of their belief system. So at times like these, every little word that you're saying around your children is going to stick with them. So if you're making sly little racist comments, that's going to stick with your kids. So I think it's more important now than ever that we step up as parents, as big brothers, as mentors, to be that positive role model that all these young kids need right now. Because the things we say right now and the way we act right now, the way that we step up and lead is going to trickle down to that next generation. And that's how change really comes about. So most of you guys know I don't do too much political talk. I actually don't talk about anything outside of what I'm an expert at and squids. I'm not an expert when it comes to squids, but I do spit some good squid facts. There's a few little facts here and there that I'll throw in that I don't really know much about. But for the most part, I stick to what I'm good at. And so I don't dive into different fields. I know that I am not the source for politics. And so I usually stay away from that. But what I can do is use this platform that I have to talk about racial injustice and to show you guys that I'm in full support of the Black Lives Matters movement. Typically, I just like to lead by action, but sometimes you can't just lead by action and also be silent. You need to step up and talk about what you actually believe in. It's been crazy. Even within my industry, there's been some stuff about strength coaches coming out where they've been making racial comments for the last 15 years, and now players are starting to speak up. They're kind of afraid before, but there's black players starting to speak up and talk about the culture. And then you have the CrossFit thing. Their CEO made some very insensitive racial comments, and he's receiving a lot of backlash. There's a lot within the fitness and strength and conditioning and basketball industry where you're starting to see people step up and be that leader and be vocal about what they believe in. And then it's kind of exposing some other people. And I don't know much about policy change, and I don't necessarily have the perfect plan of what we need to do. But what I do know is the repercussions have to be higher. For any type of racial injustice, the repercussions have to be higher. You got to be canceled. If you're racist, you're canceled. You see the CrossFit CEO tweet out those insensitive comments, and you see a lot of the CrossFit gym owners cancel their affiliation. They're going independent. The couple of strength coaches that I've seen start to get kind of exposed from their racial comments in the past, they're starting to be canceled. Now, I don't know if they're going to be fired or not, but they've been placed on administrative leave. Now, I don't know enough about that specific information and what was said to these players, but if enough evidence comes out that there was racial injustice, cancel the strength coach. You're out. You're fired. Again, I'm not saying that strength coach should be fired. I'm saying if you come out and make racial comments or any type of racial injustice, I think you should be fired. I think the CEO should be fired. And at the highest level with police brutality, it has to be the highest repercussions. If you slip up and do what you've been doing, not only are you fired, but you're in jail for life. It has to be that serious because there's still going to be racist people out there. I think a police officer has to go to work knowing that if they slip up and this happens again, they're not going home to their family. That's going to make them rethink things when it's no longer a slap on the wrist or paid administrative leave or just losing your job. It's, I'm not going home to my family and I'm in jail for the rest of my life. That's what I believe has to happen in order to slow down these cases. I would encourage you guys to do whatever you can to use your platform, because everybody does have a platform. Even if you only have 50 followers, you got 50 people where you could step up and, spread the right message, right? Even if you don't get deep into what exact policy changes need to happen, because that's beyond you, that's okay. Step up and speak your mind, get it off your chest. And I think that a lot of people will respect it, and I think it'll help a lot of people. The worst thing you can do right now is just be silent. You need to be heard. Use your platform. So today I wanted to talk about a relevant topic for athletes. A lot of athletes are starting to transition back into playing. Our NBA guys are going to be starting back up in now less than a month and a half. And so things are really starting to ramp up fast. I know a lot of you guys are either going into some type of AAU or some type of pickup environment where you're going to go start playing consistently. A lot of our top high school players are already playing 2 or 3 days a week. I want to make sure that you guys transition back into sports the right way. I did post about this on EdgeU. I did a long breakdown, and then I also did a short clip on Instagram about the studies from 2011 and the NFL lockout. So basically that year they rushed through the preseason conditioning. So they didn't get their normal conditioning period and they went straight into training camp. And I believe it was in 10 days, we had 12 Achilles tears. So in the study, they were just looking at Achilles tendon ruptures, right? They weren't looking at ACL. They weren't looking at any of the other injuries. And I'm sure there were way more, but specifically Achilles tendon injuries. They determined over the past 5 seasons that there's an average of about 4 to 8 Achilles ruptures. And these are spread out. So this is not just at the beginning. This is spread out throughout the entire year, all right? 4 to 8. In this lockout year, in the first 12 days, they had 10 Achilles tendon ruptures. That is unreal. And I believe this was all in training camp. So everybody was getting hurt in training camp, and then more Achilles tendon injuries trickled in after that. But just to show you how being underprepared leads to these catastrophic injuries, that study is very interesting to check out. Basketball players are even more at risk for things like Achilles problems, Achilles tears, or just basic overuse injuries like Achilles tendinopathy. So right now for basketball players, and I mentioned this on Instagram, I think plyometrics and agility is more important right now than it ever has been in your lifetime. Now, agility and plyometrics is always important for every athlete, but a lot of the qualities that we get from plyos, keeping the tendons nice and healthy, keeping them elastic, getting them used to spring forces, this can all come from basketball. So I don't think basketball develops it at the highest level. I think there are plyos that we should always be supplementing with, but some players do no plyos or they do very little plyos, but they maintain the qualities through the sport itself. Now the sport has been removed, and now our tendons are not used to taking those spring forces, and so now we're going to get rushed back into playing, and unfortunately, I think history tells us that we are going to have a big injury spike, especially because they're only getting, 6 weeks to prepare. And the problem is, it's not just the injuries in season, it's them knowing that they have 6 weeks to prepare. So as soon as they get back, teams are going to have them go. They got to get back to running. They're going to be getting up and down. And in that process, so in this little 6-week training camp time, I think you can have a lot of big injuries and a ton of overuse injuries that start to amount. So what I've been having all of our guys do, and it's been kind of cool for me because at first when coronavirus hit, it was like, man, we have all this stuff set up. We have sessions set up throughout the summer. It's all canceled. And so I was having a hard time adjusting to it, but we got probably 10 times the amount of NBA clients, WNBA clients. It's gone kind of viral within the NFL. We got a lot of NFL players doing our online program, which I never originally designed it for, at least the Vertical Bodyweight. I didn't design it for that level of players, but the feedback has been incredible, and people have been doing it, finishing the entire 12 weeks, and I'm getting feedback of these guys and girls are feeling nice and springy, and they're feeling healthy. We're improving a lot of knee health. And so that program is great for keeping that elasticity. And now you just got to gradually transition into actually playing, because no strength or plyometric program is going to fully prepare you for the game, because there are other factors involved like timing, right? Timing is one of the main causes of injuries. Your timing is off, your fluidity is off, your rhythm is off because you haven't been playing, and now you drive the lane and you step on a foot, right? You drive the lane and you don't know where your body is in space because your timing is off. Or fatigue sets in and you go to take a step and the timing of the muscle contractions, right? We always talk about co-contraction, pre-activation. So right before your foot hits the ground, the right muscles have to fire up to then stabilize that joint. And that's what allows for that high impact and allows for the stability at the joints. So for example, for the ankles, I need the anterior tibialis. I need the triceps surae. So the 3 calf muscles. I need and even the lateral ankle muscles and foot muscles. I need them all squeezing and contracting right before my foot hits the ground to brace for impact. But when you get away from basketball, you lose the timing of those things. So it doesn't matter if you maintain the strength in those muscles. Like I could do all the lower leg muscle strengthening and have my, lower leg muscles at an all-time high. But if we don't have the timing of co-contraction, and it's sensitive to the millisecond, and it only comes from actually playing basketball, we could potentially forget to fire a muscle, and now you got an ankle injury or you have a knee injury because of it. Same thing when you move up to the knee joint. If I'm going to make a hard cut or if I'm landing from a jump, I need quad and hamstring to work together at the correct time to contract and stabilize the knee. If I don't have that co-contraction at the perfect time, then now I'm reliant on basically my ligaments. And so now I might have an ACL tear. And so in the past, people have always looked at ACL injury of like, oh, just stay away from valgus and, strengthen up your glute medius. And more recent research shows that, yeah, that's a small part of it, but a lot of it is neurological. And so you lose those neurological aspects when you get away from your sport, because we lose things like timing. And then the other big thing that concerns me, and I've been preaching to our players, is conditioning. You got to come back in peak physical condition. Now, physical shape does not mean basketball shape. What we can all control right now is our physical shape. Basketball shape is going to come from playing basketball. Now, don't freak out and say, hey, Paul said that basketball shape is the only way to really get in shape, and start ramping it up and say 3-4 days a week I'm going out and playing. No, start at maybe 1 day per week of playing, and then your other days skills training, or your other days you're sprinkling in some one-on-one, or maybe some 3-on-3 here and there, but don't ramp it up too fast. But let's say we play 5s 1 day a week, and then on week 2, 2 days a week, week 3, 3 days a week, and we gradually ramp up to the point where we're basically playing full court 6 days a week. And then we're going to actually go in to our sport and get into more competitive, high-level play where the stakes are high and obviously the risk of injury is highest. So what I want you guys to do is look at everything as a slow, gradual progression. So your pickup games, slow, gradual progression. Your strength training, slow, gradual progression. Your plyometrics, slow, gradual progression. Everything has to be progressed, and you got to be self-aware. You got to be a squid with where you're at, because you need to look at the different aspects and say, okay, I've been doing plyometrics. I did vert code bodyweight, or I did vert code elite through this whole quarantine. And so maybe you did maintain strength and elasticity, but maybe you didn't go out and run enough. And so maybe right now is a great time to gradually start to go out and do some hill sprints, or do hill sprints on 1 day, and then the next day do some longer jogs, and start to gradually progress on your conditioning demands. So the key takeaways here: be self-aware of where you're at. Do not add too much too fast. Gradually ramp yourself up. Look at your entire 6-week period to ramp up. Don't go straight back, because that's where the injuries happen, or the overuse injuries, which you're going to have a hard time getting rid of. Sometimes those overuse injuries can stick with you for a really long time and ruin your performance and your health. Now, the other thing that's going to be interesting is seeing how guys' body composition changed throughout this entire quarantine. I think some guys are going to come in a little bit out of shape and fat. Guys were in the house overeating. They were running less. They were playing less. For some guys, it might actually be a good thing, because they rely on eating out. A lot of NBA players go eat at the finest steakhouses and just pack down these high-calorie meals, high-sodium meals. And then, they're getting on their team planes, and they have food available everywhere. You got team chefs before practice, after practice. There's always food available in the NBA. And then I think for some of those guys, it was like, oh, I got to cook for myself? Okay, I guess I'll make eggs. And so I think that a lot of people probably did end up consuming less calories because their favorite restaurant wasn't open, and because they didn't have the team chefs and everything. I think a lot of guys maybe didn't gain too much body fat. At least I know from our guys that I've been working with or that I've talked to, their body composition is about the same. Or even they've lost some fat since quarantine started. So I'm interested to see how everything is when people come back. It'll definitely expose some people who weren't working and eating the right way. But hey, we'll see. But if you're somebody who did gain some fat through quarantine and you're freaking out because you got to lose all that fat before you go back to playing, I got a couple tips for you. One, don't do it all at once. Lose 2 pounds of fat per week at the most. All right. I know that's not what you want to hear. You want to hear, I'm going to go hard and just fast my way down and just slash my calories in half, and I'm going to lose 5 pounds per week. I'm just going to transform my body people aren't going to know what hit them. No, don't do it. Rapid weight loss in athletes leads to these huge metabolic adaptations, which basically means that your body gives you a counterpunch. So you give your body a drastic cut in calories and your body goes, oh, bro, I'm 2 steps ahead of you. You did that? Cool. Watch what I do. And it just starts to shut down your metabolism, drastically decreases your metabolism. So now you're 10 or 15 pounds lighter, but you have to eat even less to stay at that body weight because of those metabolic adaptations. So if I'm 200 pounds, but I'm kind of naturally around 200 pounds, and you're 200 pounds, but you were 220 and you rapidly dieted down to 200 pounds, our calorie needs are not the same. So you can't look at our body weight and say, okay, well, we need the same amount of food. My metabolism is not compromised. His metabolism has adapted to that huge caloric deficit. So we actually can't consume the same amount of calories. If he consumed the same amount of calories as me, I would stay at the same weight and he would start to increase his weight. That fat would start to come back. Unfortunately, people end up gaining more weight on the back end. So as soon as you go back to eating normal, which you can't maintain this super low calorie diet forever. So at some point you got to go back to normal eating. And because that metabolism has adapted, you are now going to gain back some fat. And then you're going to be in this constant cycle of I lose fat and then I gain it back and then I gain more. And then I lose some fat and then I gain it back and then I gain more. And that's why if you look at the progression year after year of body weight, a lot of times you'll see that it gradually goes up as we age. And so if you do it the right way, and I just had an interview for this exclusive product that I'm releasing. I can't talk about it yet, but I will. But I was talking with Dr. Mark Bubbs, nutritionist for Canada men's basketball, and he was talking about this concept of slow and steady, lose 1 to 2 pounds per week, because that way we're not going to have this huge metabolic adaptation. We're going to be able to maintain our muscle mass. So that muscle mass is obviously huge for metabolic purposes, but then also, what are we losing weight for? Are we losing weight to jump higher and run faster? Well, then we got to make sure that our force production stays the same. We can't lose that magnitude of force production. That has to stay high, and then the body fat has to come down. So if the body fat comes down and we lose muscle mass along with that, force production comes down, and now the relative force production, so the force production compared to our body weight, has not actually increased, and so we don't actually perform better. So that's what you see when somebody goes through this rapid weight loss, and unfortunately, the sports world loves this. When the media goes crazy, coaches, GMs, they're all kind of brainwashed by this, where they think if you lost body fat, that means that your performance is going to increase, when in reality, it does not guarantee that our performance is going to increase. It may lead to more fatigue. It may lead to poor recovery. So we've talked about this a lot, so I'm not going to harp on this too much. But the only way to really lose body fat is to do it slow. 1 to 2 pounds per week. Do not freak out. Slow and steady is the best way to go. Okay, so now I'm going to take some questions on Instagram. First question is, if I'm looking for explosiveness, should I be training to failure? So it depends. When it comes to explosiveness, what we're really looking at is velocity drop-off. So I know that a lot of you guys don't track the bar speed, or you don't track your jump height on every plyometric exercise, but you can kind of eyeball it and kind of get an idea of when you're losing velocity. So, we like to use velocity trackers. And what we see is as the set goes on and as you get closer to failure, the velocity significantly drops off. Now, what the research shows is that when the velocity starts to drop off, we might as well stop the set. So we sent out 2 studies in our weekly Edge to all of our Edge U members. We send out the top studies from the week and summaries for them. And I believe in Weekly Edge Volume 2, we sent out a study that basically took two groups. One group was the 5% drop off, and the other group was 20% drop off. So they didn't stop their set until the velocity dropped off by 20%, and the 5% group didn't stop their set until they dropped off by 5%, which is not a lot, right? So basically that would be like the 5% group only cranked out 3, while the other group cranked out 9. Now, I don't know if those were the specific rep ranges that they use, but I do remember that the 5% group only did 32% of what the 20% group did. The post-testing results showed that both groups worked the exact same. And this study has been replicated. I can think of a few studies that we've sent out for EDU that back up this idea that you're not going to get an additional benefit by continuing your set when velocity starts to drop off. So if I'm doing a set of 10, but my velocity is starting to struggle, right? I'm getting up less explosive. I should make that note. We're talking about concentric velocity. So like in a squat, from that bottom position to the top position, if I'm starting to get up slower because fatigue is setting in and I'm trying to do 10, but at reps 4 and 5, we start to see a drop off, and 6 and 7, a bigger drop off. There's no point in continuing to do those unless the goal was hypertrophy, or if the goal is strictly strength, then we do want to get closer to failure. I never go to full failure, but we'll stop about 2 reps shy of failure if those were the goal, hypertrophy and strength. But if explosiveness is the goal, if vertical jump is the goal, and speed is the goal, we do not have to go anywhere near failure. Now, in that study that I'm talking about, the groups ended up the same. And so if our velocity was dropping off at 3 and we kept going, that's only adding accumulated fatigue, which is then going to decrease the amount of sets we can do. It's going to decrease the quality of our next exercise, and it's going to require more adaptive energy to recover from that session because we accumulated all this fatigue, but that didn't lead towards more improvement. So why not cut it off at 5 or 10% velocity drop off and go lower repetition, all high quality reps. And then once that velocity starts to drop off, we stop the set, because then we can stay fresher for longer. And then we don't have as much damage that we need to now take several days to recover from. So if we stick to that model of all quality reps, and once velocity starts to drop off, we stop the set, we might be able to get 3 really good high velocity sessions in. Whereas if we're pushing that to failure, if we're sprinting until fatigue basically stops us, or if we're jumping 20 times and we have a velocity drop off at rep 6, that is just adding to our overall volume, and that is just going to take longer to recover. And again, there's no added benefits. So all we're doing is accumulating fatigue and hindering our next set or our next exercise or our next session. So to wrap that up, it depends on the goal. When we're looking at moving the bar fast, or when we're looking at plyometrics, jumping, sprint training, agility, these are all areas where we want quality over quantity, and when velocity drops off, the set is done. But if you're in a phase where we're trying to get some hypertrophy or we're trying to get some strength, pushing closer to failure is going to be necessary. We've talked about this before, but with hypertrophy especially, we're looking for 5 stimulating reps, and that's why you can get bigger off a 5 rep max, or you could get bigger off a 20 or a 25 rep max, right? That old myth of going light is only going to get you cut and not get you bigger. It doesn't work like that. When it comes to getting bigger, researchers like Brad Schoenfield, who really do a lot of research in hypertrophy, I believe Chris Beardsley has also written on this topic, but we're looking for 5 stimulating reps. And so stimulating is like okay, now it's hard. Now I really got to push through. So if you're a 5 rep max, rep 1 is already, that's not cake. It's already, I got to really push. And so that would be 5 stimulating reps. If you're going for 25 reps, those first 20 could be pretty light, but eventually it's going to catch up to you, and those last 5 are going to be tough. Those are your 5 stimulating reps. And so that's basically how you look at hypertrophy. So if you were looking for hypertrophy, yeah, you want to push closer to failure. You don't have to push to failure, but get pretty close, maybe leave a couple of reps in the tank and make sure that you had 5 reps where you're like, okay, these are tough, because in the science world, that's considered your stimulating reps. Do ice baths really help with recovery, or do they just temporarily make you feel better? So what we have to look at is recovery versus adaptation. Adaptation is real gains, real physiological change. I'm growing my muscle. I'm getting stronger. I'm getting more explosive. So there's physiological changes. And then there's recovery of, I just got to feel better. Recovery is getting back to baseline. So I trained and I dipped under. Recovery is getting back here, right? Adaptation is going above that line and gaining from where we previously were. So typically in the off season, what we're after is adaptation. We're not after recovery. In season, sometimes we are after recovery. We have back-to-backs. I got to go get fresh for this game. And so speed of recovery, getting back to my normal baseline is very important. And so when it comes to recovery, ice baths, cryotherapy, they make a little bit of sense. Now, from a recovery standpoint, typically what you'll see in the research is big perceived benefits. So the athletes will say, ice bath helped me recover, cryotherapy helped me recover. But when you look at the actual physiological markers, you're typically going to see no changes. Now, every now and then you'll see a study show that it did actually change physiology. Maybe it's decreased delayed onset muscle soreness. It's rare that you find that in a study, but I've seen a few that show that. Hyperthermia is one marker that people look at that ice bath is obviously going to decrease. Improved circulation maybe is one that you could look at. There's all these different physiological markers that people are looking at. And the problem is those don't always add up with the perceived benefits. So a lot of studies will show no changes in actual physiological markers, but the athletes believe that it worked. And so it's like, well, what do we trust? Do we trust your opinion, or do we trust what the science is telling us? Keep in mind, we don't know exactly what physiological markers to look at. Things that you think are known, like, oh, we know what causes DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, that changes every couple of years. Just recently, there was a study that came out that said the idea that it's tearing in the muscle fibers, that's likely inaccurate. It probably has more to do with damage of the nerve endings. And so the things that we think we know is always changing. And so who knows if we're looking at the correct physiological markers. If athletes are saying that, yes, it for sure helps, there's a chance that maybe the science has just been asking the wrong questions. And in 5 or 10 or 15 years, they'll start to look at the right physiological markers and they'll realize, hey, ice bath does work. And they were right. The perceived benefits were right all along. Now, do keep in mind that there are some things we do know. Ice baths typically will decrease protein synthesis. Overall, when you're looking to build muscle, anti-inflammatory anything is a bad look. So taking anti-inflammatory drugs, ice bath, cryotherapy, all of these things are blunting the inflammation response. So we train and we get this inflammation. Now, for whatever reason, humans think that our conscious brain is smarter than our body's natural processes. That's not the case. Inflammation in response to a difficult workout is not a mistake. The body is doing that for a reason, and that inflammation is what is sending the signals to kickstart that growth process and that rebuilding process. That's good. We want that. Now we hop in the ice bath and we decrease that inflammation, and now we don't have that signal to initiate that growth. And so the studies will pretty consistently show that ice baths and cryotherapy overall are not a good thing for building muscle. And so it all comes down to that question: what are we after? Are we after adaptation or are we after recovery? Now, sometimes I do have guys take ice baths. Have you ever worked out in a hot gym, or you worked out outside in the heat in the summer, and the rest of the day you just kind of felt like almost drunk? Like you just felt pretty crappy, and like there's no way that you're gonna just take a couple hours off and then go do another skills workout, because it just drained you physiologically, that's the best time for an ice bath. When that heat stress is high, get the athlete in an ice bath and they feel fresh, they feel better. Now they're going to be able to go into that next workout and actually perform optimally. And again, we have players that train with us that are doing multiple workouts a day. Pre-draft, they got to be fresh. Like, yes, we're trying to put some muscle on some of these guys, but most importantly, they got to be fresh. I might have an athlete who all they got to do is improve their jump shot. I just have to keep them healthy, keep them ready, and get them performing optimally for their skill workout, because all they got to do is improve their jump shot. Ice baths, cryotherapy, that's a good idea because I'm not as worried about building muscle. I'm just trying to keep them fresh and ready to go on the court. So as always, the answer is never, oh, ice baths are good, or no, ice baths are bad. You got to ask yourself, what time of year is it? Is this my time for some muscle building and some strength improvements? Or is this my time for just skill improvements and I just have to be as fresh as possible? Or am I in season and I got to go get ready for this next game? And so you have to learn the pros and the cons. That way you can implement it at the right times of the year. All right, next one. What would you say to your 17-year-old self? Man, 17-year-old self. Don't break your hand on somebody's forehead because that'll ruin your shot for the next 10 years. Other than that, man, I don't know. Like, I'm big on allowing the mistakes that I'm supposed to make, just allowing that to happen and then immediately correcting it and learning from it. You got to let your mistakes be your best teacher. I don't think that I would want to go in any other direction. So I'm afraid if I could go back and give myself advice, that I would have steered clear of those mistakes, and then I wouldn't have been able to correct for those mistakes and get on the right path. The only other thing that I would tell my 17-year-old self is make the big time where you're at. Make the big time where you're at. So I had some frustrating years where I was sending out emails to every NBA team, every top college, trying to get a job, trying to get an internship. I was emailing NBA strength coaches, literally telling them, I will wash your towels. I will wash your towels. I'm a towel boy. Now, I was a pretty educated towel boy. I had certifications. I was getting my degree. I was already training people, but I was emailing these coaches saying, let me wash your towels. And I still couldn't get into the NBA arenas. I mean, I bet nobody would get back to me. The people who did get back to me, it's just, we're not really interested. Check back in a couple years. And so that always frustrated me. And I think that took a lot of my mental focus is because I'm trying to get there when in reality, I got 3 or 4 clients who do trust me. And yes, they're no names. Nobody knows about them. They're not high-level players. I was doing fat loss at the time. I was doing muscle building, middle-aged women and men and anybody who wanted to get their body better. Like, it wasn't glamorous and it wasn't high pay either. I was making $6 a session when I was at LA Fitness. I was training people at parks for probably $10 a session. So that wasn't really the big time, but that's where your focus needs to be. You got to make that the big time, and you got to give those clients 100% of your energy and effort and get them results. Whoever is in your gym, you get them results. It doesn't matter if they're no names or if they're NBA superstars. That's your focus. And over time, that leads to becoming a better trainer, and your athletes get better, and your resume starts to get better, and word of mouth starts to spread. And so for me, is like those 3 or 4 athletes who I was training, they ended up going somewhere, and they started talking, and their teammates started coming. And now I got some college players. They started talking. Now I got some ASU players. They started talking. Now I got some Suns players. So once you lock in on results and not your position in the industry and judging yourself based on the other trainers that are ahead of you, man, things can really take off. You can really master your craft. And then once you really become a master of your craft, people start to notice and it'll start to spread. And that's what happened with me. So for my 17-year-old self, I would say, hey, There's going to be a couple years where you're walking around ASU campus handing out flyers, begging people to train with you. Basically, train people for free, but it's all going to come back around. And don't feel like you're lesser than. Don't feel like a trainer who is further along in their journey is above you. They happen to be ahead of you in their career, but that doesn't mean that they're above you. And so that's what I would tell my 17-year-old self. Lock in on your next session. Focus on your 3 p.m. session. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Focus on 3 p.m. What state in the U.S. has the best raw athletes in the world? I don't know about for athletes. For basketball players, man, I have this debate a lot. I was just thinking about this earlier today when I was looking at high school player rankings. California. I mean, look, New York is crazy. And specifically, if you wanted to look at like a small radius, if you want to look at one city, New Jersey. New Jersey has to be the number one city. They got like 2 or 3 top 10 players, it seems like, every year. They got some raw talent in New Jersey. LA is crazy. LA is the best in the NBA by far. There's no city that has more top players than LA. James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. Who else? DeMar DeRozan. Who else? Paul Pierce. Well, we can't talk about retired guys. We're talking about right now. And then, but that's the thing. LA is so spread apart. It's like, what do we consider LA? Do we get to claim Drew Holiday? Because he's from around here. There's a lot of Klay Thompson, Orange County. But LA kind of gets to claim all of that, I think. Or if we looked at Southern California in general, I think that we have the best hoopers in the NBA. But New Jersey is producing some raw talent, and then you can't sleep on Chicago. Man, there's a lot of areas, but I'm biased because I'm in LA and I get to see these kids on a day-to-day basis. We got some kids training with us right now that it's like, man, these kids are going to be the future. These kids are going to be the future of the league. So I'm biased, so I'm going to say LA. But overall, California. If you got to argue that, argue it in the comments, but you better come with some serious facts. Why is Kyrie so good at finishing through contact? Kyrie is basketball strong. Kyrie is not heavy. Kyrie is likely not weight room strong. I've never trained him, so I don't know if he moves weight, but I don't think that he moves any real weight in the weight room compared to some other bigger basketball players. But man, he is basketball strong, meaning he knows how to throw his body weight. He knows how to hit people. He'll drive the lane, and like right as the big is at toe off, he'll give him a hit. Have you ever been hit at toe off? It doesn't matter if you have a 50-inch vertical. You can't jump. You go straight back. Now, if you hit a little bit later, like if you hit them in midair, they're already at the peak of their height. So you might be able to knock them back a little bit, but if they're a lot longer than you, they might still be able to block the shot or really contest that shot. Not saying that hitting in the air is bad, but there's some players who I consider to be basketball strong who got that timing where they can just knock you so that you can't use your athleticism. Kyrie is definitely that guy. That's also why I don't freak out when I see players who are thin when they're young. I got a couple athletes who are really, really thin and freakishly basketball strong. And my theory is that because they're undersized, they have to learn how to be basketball strong because they're driving the lane and they're getting hit and they're giving hits. And when you're undersized, when you're outweighed by 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds, you have to learn timing of when to hit, where to hit, how to use my leverage, how to get under people. And then later on when their body fills out and they start taking actual weight training more serious, and they start smashing calories and they gain a little bit of size, now they're already basketball strong, and now you added some functional mass. Now you got a freakishly strong player. That's your James Hardens. James Harden is human strong. He is weight room strong, and he's basketball strong. Kyrie isn't probably human strong or weight room strong, but he's freakishly basketball strong. And so at the very least, we need to be basketball strong That's what's going to make us a better basketball player. But when you can be that combination of somebody like Harden, that's when you really become dominant. All right, my squids, thanks for tuning in to episode 26 of the PJF podcast. Next week, I have a special guest who trains a lot of high-level NBA players, so it's going to be a pretty in-depth podcast. I'm really excited for that one, so tune in with me next week. As always, be sure to check out pjfperformance.net if you're ready to get your athleticism to the next level with the vert code bodyweight that can be done from home, or the vert code elite, which does require gym access. Also, we have Edge U for any trainers or future trainers. If you're a high school or college kid and you're like, look, I want to start mastering my craft as a trainer, Edge U is one of the best options. The reviews are incredible. We have high-level coaches from NFL, MLB, NBA who are loving Edge U, and they're using it as one of their primary sources of information. So check that out at edgeu.com. We also have Upper Echelon Nutrition officially released. So we were involved in the creation of this product. It is a whey isolate that is all natural, no artificial sweeteners, no harmful ingredients. It's actually a very straightforward, simple, healthy, clean, nutrient profile. And that's what I've always wanted out of a protein. I can trust giving our NBA players this protein because I know everything that's in it. I don't have to do additional research on the ingredients. It's third-party tested for quality assurance, so you know exactly what you're getting with Upper Echelon Whey Isolate Protein. You could check that out at upperechelon.com. Also, follow us. For a supplement company, we've been dropping gems on our Instagram account. Information basically every single day. So be sure to check out our Instagram at Upper Echelon Nutrition. Until next time, I'm out.